All right, let's dive into this. We're looking at a story about a plea for justice, one that's gone unanswered for more than a quarter of a century. It's coming directly from a group of former Moroccan soldiers, and a really dramatic recent event has turned their long wait into an urgent crisis.
So this is the literal title of the public appeal we're exploring, and you have to pay attention to that first word. This isn't just a polite request, it's a cry. It's a cry for justice, and it's aimed right at the highest authority in Morocco, using this very specific title, King of the Poor, which really implies a deep personal responsibility.
You know, this whole 26-year story really comes to a head with one single shocking event. An event that forces us to ask a really crucial question about how power actually works and where the buck for justice ultimately stopped.
Okay, so a suddenly halted hope. This recent development is what brought everything to a boiling point. It turned this rare glimmer of progress into a moment of really profound crisis for these soldiers.
You've got to picture this. After decades of total silence, something finally starts to move. A high-level military committee, put together by the Army's own Inspector General, was officially looking at these cases. Just imagine the immense hope this must have sparked for them. And then, whiplash. The feeling just completely flips. You go from active progress and what feels like real hope to a sudden, inexplicable stop. The appeal describes this as a shocking surprise that just froze the whole process right in its tracks.
So this is where the appeal makes a really powerful logical leap. The argument is pretty simple. The Inspector General is the second most powerful person in the Army. He wouldn't set up this high-profile investigation just to cancel it himself. The order, they insist, must have come from higher up.
And this leads to the explosive question at the very heart of the entire appeal. It's a question that doesn't just ask what happened, but who is responsible, pointing directly to the absolute top of the chain of command.
Now, to really understand just how devastating that sudden halt was, we have to grasp how long these soldiers had already been waiting. This wasn't some new thing. It's a grievance that has stretched on for decades.
26 years. Just let that sink in for a second. More than a quarter of a century. That's how long these folks have been fighting for what they call justice, a period that covers almost the entire reign of the current king.
So who exactly are these soldiers? Well, the appeal defines them as men who were, in their words, unjustly dismissed. And crucially, it makes a point to say that they served loyally, defending the country's borders during tough times, only to be cast aside.
This quote from the appeal? Man, it just gets right to the heart of the human cost. This was never just about losing a job. It was a fundamental blow to their dignity, to their ability to provide for their families, an injury that has just been festering for decades.
Now, the appeal argues that this is about way more than just a past injustice. It says that the continued silence, the lack of any resolution, actually creates very real and present dangers for the whole country.
The source document lays out what it sees as this really dangerous chain reaction. It starts as a moral crisis of leadership, a question of a king's duty to his soldiers. But then it says that inaction becomes an institutional insult, undermining the army itself. This then fuels a social risk, all these feelings of betrayal and anger, which ultimately threatens to erode the very foundation of national loyalty.
And this is how a very specific grievance for a few hundred soldiers becomes a symbol for something much, much bigger. According to the appeal, the way this case is handled just widens the gap between the palace and the people, and that represents a dangerous disconnect.
This right here is the core of their warning. In their view, doing justice for soldiers isn't just a nice thing to do. It's a strategic necessity. It's how a state maintains the very loyalty that holds it together.
But here's the thing. This document isn't just about warnings and complaints. After laying out all the dangers of doing nothing, it pivots to propose a really clear four-point path toward what it sees as a just resolution.
The proposed solutions here are pretty comprehensive, right? They attack the problem from all sides. First, they say reopen the file, but with a new independent committee, and it has to be established by royal order. Next, they want financial restitution through exceptional pensions, then a symbolic state apology, which is all about restoring dignity. And finally, they recommend we reframe this whole thing by treating it as a case of national transitional justice.
Now, that last recommendation, that is hugely significant. By using the term transitional justice, the appeal is deliberately putting the soldiers' situation on the same level of historical importance as the country's reckoning with the years of lead, which was one of the darkest periods of state repression in Morocco's history. It's a really powerful statement.
The appeal's final argument is aimed squarely at the monarch. It basically says that for a leader who isn't held accountable by any other institution, the act of providing justice isn't just a choice. It becomes something much more profound, a sacred duty.
And this one sentence seems to capture the very soul of the entire appeal. It argues that true service to the nation isn't just about looking forward. It has to begin by looking back and restoring the dignity of the people who sacrificed for it.
And so the cry from these soldiers ends with this simple, poignant, and, as of right now, unanswered question. It leaves all of us to think about the weight of that silence and what it really means when a 26-year plea for justice is met not with an answer, but with a closed door.